What is up, fellow football fans, and welcome back to another edition of the ONETA Football Show, brought to you by P.T.E. Creative. As always, I am your host, Evan Davies. And you're getting to see a glimpse of the new dig, so to speak, as I have officially just started recording for the first time in my new apartment in Madison, Wisconsin. So, woof. It's been quite a move, but we have a show to do for you, and that is exactly what we're going to do together today. So I teased this on the last episode of the show, and this is another teaser of what's to come, essentially. But in 2 weeks, so not next week, but 2 weeks from now, the shows are going to start. We're going to do the NFL expansion series. So just like we did the Time to Fix College Football series, which did bang up numbers for us and we were really happy with. And beyond that, it seemed like you guys, the viewer and the listeners, really, really loved that series based off of anything else that we've done here. So another project that I've been working on prior to even starting this podcast, because I knew one day this was going to come, but I wanted to start an expansion series of what would happen if the NFL went down the rabbit hole of expansion again with more teams. So we're going to get a small tease of that today because we're doing an expansion draft. So if there were a new team created in the NFL, they would be going with an expansion draft. So a 33rd team would get an expansion draft. So it's really important to know what is an expansion draft and how does it work? How does it operate? An expansion draft is something that happens every time a new team comes through. The last one happened in 2002 with the Houston Texans. In that, there are certain rules and parameters that you have to do. So I'm going to go to those right here and now for some notes. So you get to see some awesome footage of me reading. But each team listed 5 players that the Texans could select, and the Texans were required to claim either 30 players or $27.2 million in contracts. Remember, that's 2002. That equated to 38% of the 2002 salary cap. After the Texans selected a player from an existing team, that team could remove a player from their remaining list. They didn't have to, but they could do so. If a second player was taken, the existing team could then pull back its remaining players. However, teams were not required to remove players from the draftable list. The reason I'm stating this one specifically is resulting in 3 Jets and 3 Jaguars being drafted to the Texans. The Texans were prohibited from selecting a player from a team and trading the player back to that club. So, first and foremost, you got to deal with number of players. You have to deal with amount of money contract. So, using that 38% rule, if we are going to be doing that expansion draft, this would have to happen in 2025 for the 2020, or this would have to happen for 2025 season. So roughly our salary cap number is 96.6. It's either 96.6 or $96.9 million of cap that you'd have to pick, which really isn't that difficult to get to, and you'll see that throughout my draft here. So you need to hit a certain threshold of salary cap. Second, there are player limitations to what can happen. Existing teams at the time were not allowed to put punters or kickers on the list, nor any player from their 2001 roster who would have become a free agent in 2002. So they need to still have a remaining year of contract, essentially. So that's the reason you have it in 2025 when the contract expires in 2026. So you can't just put players on your roster that are technically still there till the end of the league year, but they only have days left on their contract. That's not fair. They could not list players who went on injured reserve during the 2001 summer training camp, nor any player who would become a restricted free agent after the 2001 season. This list could include only one player with more than 10 years experience. So, again, you have to protect players with tenure. Each team can only do one at the time. Plus, no one on the injured reserve. They had to have a year remaining on their contract. A lot of this becomes you needed salary cap dumps. You needed to get rid of your salary cap issues. So the Jaguars and the Jets at the time understood that they were in cap hell. They needed to get out of it, so they used that to their advantage. They put up some players that they didn't necessarily want to get rid of, but understood that from a salary cap situation, they needed to do. So, for instance, at the time, the Texans actually picked up 2 Pro Bowl players in this draft. But let's go over quick some figures. Some teams use the expansion draft as a way to eliminate expensive veteran players from their salary caps, like I said. Some of those notable players that were exposed to the draft, Pro Bowler Tony Baselli, who was a hell of a tackle in his day. He was the first pick from the Jaguars. However, he got injured, which is why he never played for the Texans. He got injured that summer. Randall McDaniel, Hall of Famer. Willie Rolfe, hell of a good player. He was available to be picked as well. The Jets also went unprotected with Aaron Glenn, who at the time had an $8 million salary cap figure. So they wanted to keep Glenn, but they understood from a salary cap standpoint they had to put him up on the chopping block. And they just thought, if the Texans don't take him, that's great. We can still keep him. We'll figure it out. But if they do take him, then we fix our salary cap issues. But the Texans did end up taking it because they wanted talent. Aaron Glenn was one of 2 Pro Bowl players they actually picked up that actually made a Pro Bowl with them, which is really cool. If the Texans cut a selection and he re-signed with the old team, the existing team reassumed his signing bonus. So you can't just send players with big signing bonuses over to the Texans hoping they'll be taken, because you had to provide the signing bonus if they got cut. Extra bonuses that did not count against the Texans' salary cap were given to veteran players who were selected. They received $10,000 immediately because being selected in the draft, $20K bonus for reporting to training camp, and they got another $30 just for making the active roster during the regular season. So inherently, that would have to jump quite a bit. So you'd be looking at probably a $50,000 immediate roster bonus there, or immediate bonus. You get a $100K bonus just to come to training camp, and you get $150,000 to make the active roster. Now, in NFL numbers, those are really tiny, but at least it's an incentivization program, especially with some of these lower contract people, these lower contracted players. They're going to need incentives to be there, so that's what they had to do. So that is where we had to go from. That was the basis of the expansion draft last time. So for today's expansion draft, let's make up a team. You know what? I'm going to give you a team that I made in my sports and entertainment marketing class when I was 16, because I was just having fun with that one. And we are going to be, in today's expansion draft, we will be the Alaskan Dynamo. We will be the Alaskan Dynamos, and we are drafting a new team. We are going to be based out of Anchorage, Alaska. We're going to have ourselves a hell of a good team by the end of this as much as possible. So we're going to give you a little bit of theory as to why we want to do what we want to do. Each player has a reason, and it was very important to me to get you that reason. Now, one thing I will tell you this right here and now was that to use this, you needed to be as many. You saw there's a lot of qualifiers there. You needed to have players that still had a year of their contract left. They couldn't have been injured. The injuries were a little bit difficult for me, so I may have missed 1 or 2, but nonetheless, they're generally here. And you could only put up players with, at the time, would have 10 years experience or more. Only 1 from each team could go. So you're looking at players that aren't going to be on the roster because of salary cap issues or production issues. That's really what you're looking at. So a few good players are really going to sneak through the cracks, but you got to make the best team out of what you're doing. So to do that, I went with Spot Track. So Spot Track, it's one of the best tools you can see if you want to try to start learning some of this stuff. So these are all the players. This is in 2026. So I inherently went to 2026 because we're doing this in 2025. We need to know that there is still a year on their contract because we're doing this draft hypothetically in 2025. So you can see top end players: Aaron Rodgers, T.J. Watt, Daniil Hunter, DK Metcalf, Joey Bosa, Jalen Ramsey. Those guys, they're all technically available. However, we all know Aaron Rodgers is either going to stay with the Jets or he's going to be retired at that point. There's no way TJ Watt's ever going to leave the Pittsburgh Steelers. A lot of these guys I didn't draft. Not because I wouldn't want them on my team. I would love to have the vast majority of the players on the top end that I'm showing you right now. However, we needed to have a basis of reality in this. That's always what I'm trying to give you guys. So that is why for this draft, I went with as many players as possible that could be logically argued would have a possibility of being on the chopping block and available to draft. So without further ado, I think we should get right into that draft and see who I would be picking up for the Alaskan Dynamo. So here we go. With the first pick in the 2025 NFL expansion draft, the Alaskan Dynamo are going to select Jonathan Allen, defensive tackle from the Washington Commanders. As you can already see from this picture, we've got a captain on our hands. Jonathan Allen is a hell of a player who just signed a bigger money extension. However, Jonathan Allen, he's right on the fringe spot track. I believe because I was using the 2026, it didn't have the best accurate number of seasons accrued or years of experience. However, he's right on the fringe of the 9 or 10. But still doesn't violate any rules because he would be the one player, if he was at the 10, that the 10 years of experience that Washington would give up. This is the biggest thing. Due to that big money extension, we have an $18 million a year salary cap issue with Jonathan Allen. And remember, you're creeping up with, if Jaden Daniels pans out, you're going to know you're going to have to pay Jaden Daniels sooner or later, so you want to start getting money off the books. That usually tends to happen where you keep guys as long as you can, but then when you see that quarterback's really coming through, if there's a way to start sneaking the books to get some extra cap out, you start doing that. Jonathan Allen has been one of their cornerstones of that big defensive line that was very hit or miss because when it was on, that was one of the best defensive lines in football. They were phenomenal. When it was off, woof! But Jonathan Allen has always been a cornerstone of that line for the last 5-6 years. I very much appreciate Jonathan Allen's talents. I knew we needed to have a defensive presence in this draft, and I went with Jonathan Allen. So right away, we've picked up $18 million on our salary cap. Washington loses $18 million on their salary cap, which is extremely wise. And we have the first player to ever be selected to the Alaskan Dynamo. And our second pickup, you're seeing trench player here with Jonathan Allen. We're going to stick in the trenches as well. We're going to pick up Joe Thuney with the second pick. The Alaskan Dynamo select Joe Thuney, offensive guard, Kansas City Chiefs. Now think about it this way. Thuney's been there 2 years, and this year would be a third year. So he's getting older in age. He's over 30, just like Jonathan Allen is. So that's another reason that some of these guys might go, is due to age. And that, who knows if they're going to get picked up. With that, again, it's a salary dump. Joe Thuney counts for $16 million against the Kansas City Chiefs cap. This is a cap that also just bonused Travis Kelce. You have Chris Jones on that roster, who's going to stay there at least another 2-3 years. You have George Karlaftis as the pass rusher, who's probably going to need to have a middle-of-the-road contract with the way he was playing. You're seeing a lot of good players in Kansas City starting to need to get paid. And there's only so many times that you can just flush it out and just stick with, oh, Patrick and Travis got us. And they still have expensive tackles as well. So Joe Thuney theoretically, although he's a very good player, probably gets cut out due to salary cap with $16 million. So we're already up $34 million in cap with this selection. But again, we're looking at trench players that still have some longevity. Jonathan Allen still should give us about 2-3 more years of good play. Joe Thuney, by offensive guard standards, still should be able to give us 2 to 3 years of good play. We're assuming those contracts. We have cornerstones in our trenches. Those are very important pieces to have. That's what we're going to do. So we pick up a defensive tackle and an offensive guard to worry about our trenches. Now, the next one might surprise a few, but it's important to note. The NFL is a passing league, and how do you win games? You outpass people, and you defend the pass better than others. And that is why my next selection, Asking Dynamo with third selection, 2025 NFL expansion draft, select Tariq Woolen, cornerback, Seattle Seahawks. So this is not a salary cap measure per se. Currently, Tariq Woolen, due to his draft status, makes less than $1 million a year. He's right on the fringe of $1 million. But here's the really interesting part with Tariq Woolen. Up and down play plagued him all of last year. In the scenario of 2025, he would be coming due for a contract. A bigger money contract, because some of his play has very much justified him getting a bigger money contract. Some of his play has not. And you don't know how the transition is going to be with the new coaching staff with Mike McDonald up in Seattle. Which is why, theoretically, you're going to have a very interesting play here. In that, Seattle is going to preemptively, knowing that he's going to need a big money contract, put him up for selection. It's going to be one of those that they kind of hope it doesn't happen, but they already have good enough corners and a good enough defensive backfield to justify allowing Tariq Woolen to go, since he became kind of the third rotational piece in their corner room anyways, due to his up and down play. We're going to take a risk here, knowing full well we may have to pay him, because A, we have no salary cap right now. We started with a $0 salary cap, which is great. So we're going to get cheap play at the corner position for a quality player who, if it pans out for us, we're going to have a corner for our franchise for the next 5 to 6 years. Tariq Woolen has size, has speed, has physicality. Like that, that's what we want. So for less than $1 million, Tariq Woolen can become an Alaskan Dynamo. So those are the things you need to think about. It's not inherently, oh, well, I want the best players, best players, best players. Sometimes the best players, there's a situation in which you can't take them. For instance, you saw Randall McDaniel was up for selection. Randall McDaniel is a Pro Football Hall of Famer. I love Randall McDaniel's play. However, at the end of his year with big money contracts there with Minnesota Vikings, the Texans didn't want to take on that risk with Randall McDaniel. So they didn't. So it's not always about taking the best player. It's getting the best player for the situation. Here, I think this is the best player that you can get at the moment with other good reasons behind it. I think there are players that are more valuable behind him in this draft. However, I still think he's a very valuable piece, which is why we're going to go to the next interesting scenario. We're going to go back-to-back Seahawks. What I just say, it's a passing game. To win NFL games, you need to be in a passing game. Our next pick, to get the quarterback to start our franchise, we're going to go Geno Smith, the quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, a lot of people might be saying, that's their starter. What are you doing? You can't assume Geno is just going to be gone like that. That's crazy, right? Well, there's a couple things with that are very important to look at. One, Geno Smith is coming to the end of a contract where he's getting paid a good amount of money. According to Spot Rack, I think it's a little bit more than this. In the year that Geno Smith would have remaining, he'd have about $25 million average. You're paying almost $30 for $30 million for Geno Smith, and it is apparent in Seattle that although they like Geno Smith, they're going to go a different direction. At the quarterback position sooner rather than later. So here, they get a no stakes, no problem. Let's just wash 25 to $30 million off our salary cap. Now, for numbers purposes, we went with the 25 here because it's the most concrete thing I could find. But I believe it's more around the 30 mark. So number one, Seattle is going to want to get that $30 million scot-free right off their roster to clear way for more quarterbacks and better players. Number one. Two, Geno's going to be 34 going into the 2025 season. So inherently, you have someone who's aging. He's a good veteran player to have. He's shown that he can play at a high level right now in the NFL. And I like Geno Smith. You guys have heard me say that in our quarterback rankings and everything else. I think Geno can play. Having said that, Seattle might take the opportunity to do it. So in this scenario, they put up Geno. We need a quarterback to start this roster. Knowing full well, expansion drafts happen before the NFL draft, the college draft, to draft college players. In an expansion draft, you pretty much always reward the first pick to the new team. So we're quarterback hunting, most likely, or we're BPA, we're best player available in that draft. Who's the number one draft pick? We're taking them. Right? We need a quarterback. We can get a good journeyman, serviceable quarterback right here that can make us competitive immediately. That's why we want to go with Geno. Now, the bigger caveat, or the other big caveat here is this. With Tariq Woolen, we said Seattle may want to keep him, but the salary cap implications say it might be a no-go, right? Now, if we were to take Geno Smith before Tariq Woolen, it gives Seattle the opportunity to take him out of the draft. We don't want that to happen because we are valuing Tariq Woolen in this situation. Because, like we said in the rules, the teams put up 5 players, and then every time one of their players was drafted, they got to take one player off the list. Now, if we take Geno Smith before Tariq Woolen, which many people, a conventional wisdom would say, no matter what, you take your quarterback first. Because the quarterback's the most versatile and valuable piece. Here, we don't need to do that because we need to evaluate based on salary cap, quality of play, and longevity. And we can understand that, well, just because you pick a player from Washington first doesn't mean Seattle gets to take a player off, right? Whereas if we pick Geno over Tariq Woolen first, Tariq Woolen's going to probably come off the board of Seattle's available players. So in that scenario, we take Tariq Woolen first, knowing full well Geno's probably going to be there for us due to the salary cap and age implications. So that's why we do what we do here. And that's why we take Geno Smith after Tariq Woolen. Conventional wisdom, classic football says, well, you need to go get your leader and you take your quarterback first because you show that your quarterback is the priority and he's the leader of the team and all that good stuff. I understand that. You want to put your quarterback in a position to succeed. You want to put your quarterback in a position where he can lead. And you want to set him up for that. However, this is not conventional wisdom. These expansion drafts don't happen that much because you need to prioritize the rules of the expansion draft to make the best team for yourself possible so you can be competitive right away. So that's why we took Geno at 4 instead of 3 because we took Tariq Woolen first. Inherently now, because we just took 2 players from Seattle, Seattle could wipe any player that they have left available. They could take them all back, which is fine. But we don't have any more Seattle Seahawks players to be drafted. Now, those are big caveats here. Now, we're going to go to the second team that we're double dipping from here with the 5th pick in 25 expansion draft. Asking down, we're going to take Andrew Wiley, offensive tackle Washington Commanders. So we're going back to the Commanders. Wiley does not hit the 10-year mark, so he can be up no matter what with that. Andrew Wiley counts for $8 million against salary cap. Andrew Wiley is a good rotational tackle. Andrew Wiley can play guard. He can play tackle. Andrew Wiley has played for a few teams that I have rooted for in some way, shape, or form. There are times that you go, wow, Andrew Wiley really came through for us. And then you go, oh, God, Andrew Wiley is a liability. Now, you may be saying, well, why would a new team want him here? First of all, in what way, shape, or form are you able to get a good rotational tackle? How often does that happen? Rarely. Plus, you're looking at a team that's going to have a 34, 35-year-old quarterback. So you're going to need to look at the youth department pretty quickly there. And you can't project what the rest of the draft is going to be outside of your own plans. So you need to understand what are the positions you always need that are rarer to come up in the NFL college draft as well. Tackles are hard. You either get years that are loaded or you get years where you get one or two really good prospects. Tackle is a problem. You need to protect the blind side of your quarterback or just the edge of the quarterback, frankly. So that's a priority there. You always know in today's day and age, receivers are available and ready to go. So you're not going to prioritize receivers of this level super high, which is ironic with the next couple picks that I have coming up. However, you're trying to build the best team possible. If we get a good side of our line with Joe Thuney, Andrew Wiley, and then we start building through the draft the rest of our team, and free agency would also be right after this, we have the ability to make a pretty good team here. So we're going to take Andrew Wiley to start a good, competitive offensive line. So for another $8 million, we pick up Andrew Wiley. So right there, we already have over half. We already were pretty much to the halfway point, but we're definitely over half of our salary cap needs to fulfill our requirements in this draft. So it's important to do. So we get a good tackle, pair them with a good guard. I shouldn't say good guard, a hell of a good guard, Joe Thuney. Plus, we have a defensive piece over in Jonathan Allen. We have quarterback now. We have a corner in Tariq Woolen. So we're starting with those good foundational pieces that you need to run your team. Our next pick, we need some speed. We need some offensive playmakers. I went to my beloved team, and I went with Christian Watson, wide receiver out of Green Bay. So here's the big thing with Christian Watson. In this scenario, Christian Watson would have a year left on his deal. To the best of my ability, to the best of my knowledge. Because he's played in this scenario 2022, 2023, and then 2024. He was a second-round pick, so you don't always have that 5-year contract option on them. Here with Christian Watson, here's the big deal. He's making $2.3 million at the time of this. No problem. That is a very minuscule amount to be paying a really top-of-the-market speed-wise wide receiver. However, Christian Watson has had inconsistent play in Green Bay. When he's on, he's on. And I really love when Christian Watson is healthy. Because generally speaking, when he's healthy, he's consistent, and he's a hell of a player. Problem is this. He has been injured more often than he has played. That's your biggest issue with Christian Watson. He has had inconsistencies throughout his career with Green Bay. It's not a talent issue. It's not even a play issue. It's an availability issue. So in a contract year, or in a scenario in which Green Bay is going to start looking at, we're going to have to start paying a lot of our young receivers. We have Romeo Doubs, who's Jordan Love's biggest target right now. We have Jaden Reed, who's probably the alpha of the room. Bo Melton is a good player. Dontavian Wicks is a hell of a player. Malik Heath is there. Samari Toure is a good rotational wide receiver. That wide receiver room is going to start getting real expensive. you can buy yourself an extra year of salary dump, plus take out the least consistent piece as of right now of the room if you do this. Now, as a Packer fan, would I be happy to see Christian Watson was available? No. Because I think Christian Watson, when healthy, can be one hell of a player for the Green Bay Packers. I think he's a hell of an NFL-level receiver when healthy. The issue is the health. But he's not injured during training camps. He gets injured during the season, and then he loses wide breadths of time. So for a $2.3 million risk to get some top-end speed on your team, you're going to take that as an expansion team. But as the team that already has it and sees it more as a possible problem than a possible solution, you let it go. That's the biggest thing why Christian Watson could be available in this situation, in this scenario or situation. That's why I'm taking Christian Watson with the 6th pick of the expansion draft. So we pick up another $2.3 million. So we're seeing inexpensive players coming towards contracts, and we're seeing veteran players with big money contracts as a part of this. But you're going to start seeing the big money is going to end relatively quickly. Our last big money player, though, is going to be right here. We're going to stay at the wide receiver position. We're going to go Christian Kirk, wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Kirk really showed out these past 2 seasons with the Jaguars. He didn't get to do as much last year due to just that team not having any offensive line help and Trevor Lawrence being hurt. But Christian Kirk showed up to play for the Jaguars. And everyone said it was a really stupid contract, myself included. He proved a lot of people wrong. Kirk is going to have an $18 million cap hit for a 2025 season. Having said that, though, you get a veteran receiver who's very good across the middle, who's very good of getting those sneaking plays in, to break zones, all those kind of situations, and pair it with a top-end speed guy in Christian Watson. So you have a 2-level threat at the wide receiver position. In this scenario, Kirk would be available due to the big money hit coming towards the end of a contract. Because you just paid Trevor Lawrence, so you're going to start thinking of how do we get more money out to pay other players, now that the fact that we just paid $55 million a year to Trevor Lawrence. That's the big thing here, which is why Christian Kirk could be available. But in those first 7 picks, what did we prioritize? Plugging the run and attacking the quarterback. Actually, we're going to wait on that. But think about why we're doing what we're doing as we're doing. Because I picked 16 players in this draft, so we'll get through the first half. Go from there. So our next pick, with the 8th pick in the expansion draft, we're going to take Jordan Davis, defensive tackle, Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Jordan Davis is a bit of a wild one. This could be one of the bigger stretches in terms of who is a available player. Here's the thing with Jordan Davis. He played 2022, he played 2023. He has not had any real consistent play, and he has not impressed in Philadelphia. But there are size and traits there that you really want, and he has had flashes from time to time. Those are the kind of players you're going to see a lot of with bigger names in an expansion draft. You're not going to get a lot of Pro Bowl, All-Pro players. We already kind of took the 2 big ones right at the top. But Jordan Davis still has a world of potential. He has room to grow. So we're good on that. Plus, he is a run-stuffing machine with the amount of size that he has in the middle. So we allow Jonathan Allen, our more athletic defensive tackle, to still plug the run, but be more of an interior presence, where Jordan Davis, pair him with Jonathan Allen, and you allow him to be more of your run stuffer. We pick him up for $4.25 million because that's the other reason Philadelphia wants to do this. They're looking at all these players that they're paying right now. And although Howie Roseman just seems to be a magician and is able to do it, somehow the Eagles always find a way to pay people. They also let a lot of people go. But people don't notice it because it's usually one a year somebody goes that's a bigger money contract, and they give more money to somebody else. But you get rid of the You get rid of another 2 years of bigger money where you're looking at $30 million in salary cap based off of a first round pick. The last year of their 5th-year option is pretty big. You don't even get to the 5th-year option here. You just say, we're going to let the Dynamo select if he gets the 5th-year option picked up or not. But still fair game. We get $4.5 million off our salary cap. And that's there's one fewer first round pick for us to pay. So that's really the idea, is inconsistent or disappointing play in combination with the salary cap. That's why Jordan Davis could be available. We're going to pick him up because we think the size can really help us out. The athleticism could help us out. And he can be a good player for us paired with Jonathan Allen. So that's the first top half of our draft. And we're just south. I'm talking just south of our salary cap requirements to make this draft follow NFL rules. So in our first half, look at this. 2 defensive tackles. We want run stoppers, and we want interior presence to rush the quarterback. We got that in Jonathan Allen, where run stuffer can be Jordan Davis. Right there, you have a good interior presence. We look at protecting our quarterback. We picked up Joe Thuney and Andrew Wiley. We're going to protect our quarterback so we can pass the ball. We have our quarterback that we know wants to be aggressive, who can pass downfield, and Geno Smith. He's going to buy us a little bit of time to find our quarterback of the future. Theoretically, in this scenario, if it were me running an expansion team and I had the guaranteed first pick, and I knew all these good quarterbacks were still coming up, Quinn Ewers, Shedeur Sanders, guys like that, I'm looking and going, Carson Beck out of Georgia. Now, I haven't scouted any of those guys, so I'm not going to straight up tell you they're going to be great. But it's just, those are the bigger prospects you're looking at coming into the NFL draft this year. But you're immediately looking at, we're going to rush the passer and stop the run. We're going to protect our passer and our future passer. We're going to get a good aggressive passer who wants to go downfield. And we're going to get 2 wide receivers that can do multi-level things at the NFL level. Plus, we're going to go take a corner to go help us defend the pass. So immediately, we're looking at those bigger needs of NFL teams right now, and we're going to address those as fast as we possibly can with our first 8 picks. And we pick up the bulk of the core of our team right there. Alrighty. And for the second half, it's going to be a little more varied. The last, quote, big money, and it's not huge money contract, is this one. With the 9th pick of the expansion draft, the Alaskan Dynamo are going to select Kenneth Murray. Now here he's pictured as a Charger, however, he just signed with the Titans. Interior linebacker. I am a huge proponent of the middle linebacker position. I do not understand why people devalue that position as much as they do. The big thing here is this. I really like Kenneth Murray's abilities to do what he does, but he's not an all-around great player, but he does certain things really well. But again, he's costing $7.75 million. As a new hire or a new signing, you're thinking, there's no way. They just signed him. You can think that again, because look at this. Will Levis would be coming due for a contract. If they believe Will Levis is the guy, they're going to have to pay Will Levis. They're going to continue to pick up these younger players that are going to be due more big money contracts. If Kenneth Murray does not wow people and he's just good, those are players you usually let go because the money is not worth the play. Now, like I said, I'm a believer in Kenneth Murray. I really liked Kenneth Murray coming out of Oklahoma. I think he has been a good player for the Chargers. I just think people were expecting Ray Lewis, and that's not who Kenneth Murray is. He's a seek and destroy kind of player, which is great, but he's a little bit undersized. There are things that he could work on to get better. However, he's a good NFL middle linebacker. but I'm looking at the interior of my team going, okay, I have Kenneth Murray, who's slightly undersized, in my opinion. Slightly undersized behind Jonathan Allen and Jordan Davis. Okay, that's probably going to help me quite a bit in freeing him to do a little bit more because there's going to be so much bulk and size in front of him. So from the Dynamo perspective, the new team perspective, we pick up a good athletic player who maybe we can free him up a little bit. Tennessee loses almost $8 million in salary cap as they're due to go pay their quarterback or possibly draft another one. So there's a lot of plays in there. With that takes us to the $100.3 million mark. So we've already, in 9 players, we've already taken the responsibilities of the NFL draft. We could stop there, and we could say, this is the end of our expansion draft. We don't want any more players. We have over $150 million of salary cap still. That's great. But we're going to keep doing that because now you're going to see really good options to possibly pick up here in the expansion draft. We're going to continue the draft here. Pick 10, we're going to go Tyler Algier, running back of the Atlanta Falcons. So Algier would be going towards year 4 with the Atlanta Falcons. But they just picked Bijan Robinson, and they are trying to make him that bell cow running back, that main feature. They don't need a second running back of Tyler Algier's quality, especially when you have to probably start throwing him a couple $1 million to stay. That's a superfluous purchase. That's a superfluous signing when you know you're going to have to pay Bijan Robinson. You just signed a rookie quarterback, plus you have a $40 million a year quarterback in Kirk Cousins, plus you have Kyle Pitts and Drake London coming up for contract. Like, there's all those issues. And you have A.J. Terrell, who needs to get paid soon, too. You have all those issues of salary cap. So little ticky-tack signings, and you think they're ticky-tack, but $2, $3, $4 million can go a long way. Tyler Algier is worth a middle-of-the-road running back contract. But he's an explosive player that can give us a little bit of juice. We're going to take him because at the time, he's making less than $1 million. He's due a little money, though, from his play. So for less than $1 million, knowing we're going to have to pay a couple million here, but we have a lot of room to spend, we're going to take Tyler Algier. We're going to get an effective player in our backfield to help us out as both a running and pass-catching threat out of the backfield. We take up Tyler Algier for less than $1 million. Now, here could be another salary cap issue. This is Deron Bland, corner for the Dallas Cowboys. That's who we're going to be taking with our 11th pick. When looking at Spot Rack, what flabbergasted me is so many offensive players of merit were worthwhile picks here. Defense was a little bit harder, and at this level, unless you're going to say like Jalen Ramsey is going to be available for selection, which seems highly unlikely, there weren't a lot of high-level cornerbacks outside of possibly Tariq Woolen to grab. But there weren't a high-level defensive players in general to take. Here in Deron Bland, you have somebody who's making less than $1 million, but he's on a team with 3 players that need to get paid. And we're talking big money paid, not like, oh, they're going to make a couple extra mil. You're talking about Dak Prescott with a quarterback contract. You're talking about CeeDee Lamb, who's going to command over $20 to $30 million as a wide receiver position. You're going to be talking about Micah Parsons, who's going to have a $30+ million contract a year as the best pass rusher in football. So players like this that deserve a middle-of-the-road contract go the way of the dodo because you have to focus on the needs of your team and the big needs of your team, your tent poles. So there, you're having an issue of, okay, well, I need to pay my guys. I need to be able to do what I need to do. So I'm going to get a corner who is a good a good run-of-the-mill corner. Deron Bland does not wow me. He's not great, but he can be a functional player. And a lot of times that's what corners become when you can't find a good one. You get as many decent players that you can. And here in an expansion draft for the 11th pick for less than $1 million to get your second starter, it's a good selection to have. No shade to Deron Bland. I just don't find him to be the greatest player. But in an expansion draft, you don't get to find greatest players. You get to find good or middle of the road players that are available to you that you can pick up. So we're going to take Deron Bland. We're going to have our 2 starting corners in Tariq Woolen and Deron Bland. Knowing full well we can probably address that in the draft with a good corner if they're available. We're going to keep going. 12th pick, offensive tackle David Sharp. He's currently playing for Houston. He's the one spiking the ball in the picture if you're watching visually. He'd have about 7 years of experience. He's a journeyman offensive lineman. You need to fill out your roster a little bit more, though. When you can get a tackle who's a decent journeyman player for $1.29 million at the tackle position, you take it. So I'm looking at Andrew Wiley is a good player with a few flaws. Joe Tooney's a really good player. And then I can have David Sharp to start as I'm looking for those next big players. So I'm filling out my line pretty well here where I have 3 of my 5 starters right off the bat. Plus I still have free agency right after that. I have a couple other things right after that. In the draft, we can always make a trade after those if we want to really make an impact here. So for $1.29 million, you can get a good starting or rotational offensive line piece. You take it. So that's why we're taking David Sharp. And rotational guys a lot of the time do end up in expansion drafts because you're looking for things that you'd be willing to lose. And that's where you get players like David Sharp. Oh, my apologies. I did take another team of double dips. So with our 13th pick, we're going to take Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver from the Dallas Cowboys. Tolbert is a depth wide receiver. Tolbert has been trying to play as the number 2 receiver. He's more of a 3 or a 4. I love having deep receiver rooms. Sorry, I grew up with the Green Bay Packers where they rarely had a number 1. Outside of the Devontae Adams years, the vast majority of my lifetime, you had 3 years as Sterling Sharp was the unequivocal guy, and then you had the late year Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers years where Devontae Adams was obviously the guy. Otherwise, for the vast majority of my lifetime, Green Bay has had extremely good to great receiver rooms with depth where they don't go, we want 1 great guy. We want 4 or 5 really good to great guys. Just like they're doing in Green Bay now, where they have a room with 6, 7 deep where they could all start on someone else's team for the most part. Malik Heath would be a good third receiver for most teams, and he's the 6th receiver in Green Bay. I think that tells you a lot about the depth in Green Bay. I always want to echo that. Teams that succeed do that. Kansas City does that now with the wide receiver room that they're building. I always want to have a deep wide receiver room. And for $1.28 million here, I can get a good number 3 or 4 receiver. Why wouldn't I take that opportunity? Plus, it's a low-risk option. If there's a better receiver I can pick up in the draft, I can still have him as a rotational piece, and maybe he's the first to walk later. So you do have to think about those things. And it's no shade to Jalen Tolbert, but that's who the player he is. He's a depth wide receiver. He's not a number 1 or 2 holy shit receiver. So those are your big things when you're looking at it. So Dallas, Tolbert's still on the board because they have to pay other guys. Or they just paid other guys in this scenario. So that's where you're looking at that. So we just drafted 3 wide receivers. So we have our wide receiver room pretty well started. Running back, a quarterback, and we have 3 players to protect our quarterback. That doesn't tell you we prioritize the offense. I don't know what does. All right, we got 3 picks left, and they're all small money deals that are really helpful to us, in my opinion. 14 pick. We're going to go backup quarterback here. We're going to select Malik Willis, quarterback from the Tennessee Titans. And for our YouTube watchers here, we get those sweet powder blue, love you blue Houston Oilers throwbacks that the Titans have. Here's the thing with Malik Willis. When he had the opportunity to start, he was thrown in and didn't have much of a chance to do anything. Now, I do not believe that Malik Willis is going to be the guy, that he's going to turn into a top 10 quarterback. That doesn't look like that's Malik Willis's path in the NFL. However, there are a few flashes, especially with the athleticism, that I do like in Malik Willis, who we now have an older quarterback in Geno. We're going to need a younger quarterback to back him up. Malik Willis is a $1.29 million cap hit here. And we could have an extra year of contract on him. Plus, we're looking for our franchise quarterback of the future. So inherently, the reason we did this is this scenario. You don't know if you're going to love or even like some of the new quarterback prospects coming out in the college draft after this. But what you could get is an athletic quarterback that kind of matches the style of your starting quarterback. Plus, you add quarterback depth to your room in case something happens. I think Malik Willis, I don't think he's going to go win you a Super Bowl. But he could be a good backup option for a couple games if Geno gets hurt. So here we're thinking about long-term longevity of our team deep into seasons. And if it works out and he pans out and you start liking Malik Willis, great, you have a good problem on your hands. Do you think that's going to happen? No, but backup quarterback is a position that's not valued enough in this league. It's just not. So we're going to take one from Tennessee. And that would be another double dip. My God, I keep missing these double dips. But after Kenneth Murray, Malik Willis, you're going to have Will Levis that you're going to want to pay most likely. The Titans really believe in Will Levis. Don't understand that one, but that's just me. I think it's kind of fucking crazy, but whatever. But you're going to be getting ready to pay Will Levis or go draft another quarterback. Do you want another guy in the room that's young? That you want to go get a veteran that's going to go help you out and learn. So Malik Willis will probably be on the chopping block here. So we'll take a backup quarterback that has some athleticism to it. We can do that, Malik Willis. All right, 15th pick here. We're going to take Jerome Ford, running back from the Cleveland Browns. Ford, again, he's making less than $1 million. The Browns love running back depth, but they go through a lot of those guys. Ford has a little bit of burst to him. He's got a little bit of speed to him. I do like him as a player. We're going to add depth to our running back room, and look, we going majority of our team is offense. Also because we're not seeing a lot of good defensive abilities here for the players available. But for less than $1 million, you can go pick up a good serviceable running back. You can have a two-headed monster to a degree. I'm not saying they're God's gift to the running back position, but you can go get 2 quality running backs for less than $2 million. That's a no-brainer. You take it. You take that immediately. You take that. So we can have Jerome Ford and Tyler Algier out of the backfield. Both have good rotational bits in which they're learning how to do blitz pickup pretty well, which I do appreciate. So we're looking at our offense and going, okay, we have the core of what we're going to do. This would also be a great approach if, let's say, this roster held out in terms of the expansion draft players were available to us, was heavy offense, and there was a really heavy defensive draft. That would be the perfect way to go. Well, I know I have a really deep defensive draft and not a deep offensive draft. I need to find my offensive depth. I'm taking it in my expansion draft. So this could work out well in this scenario. But I like Jerome Ford. I think he's a good player. Could help you out. and give you a good second running back with some pass catching ability as well. So that's why we go Jerome Ford at 15. And 16. Another thing, less than $1 million. With the 16th and then final pick of the NFL expansion draft, Alaskan Dynamo are going to select Xavier Gibson, wide receiver, New York Jets. This would be our fourth receiver. A lot of people saying, "Oh, why are you doing that?" First of all, you can never have enough receivers now in the NFL. Number one. Number two. I have preached this on and on and on and on and on in former podcasts, and I always will. Special teams is important. Xavier Gibson might be a guy that might not even make an expansion draft availability because of his ability to return punts and kicks. And he's a good, decent, explosive player as well. Gibson has speed and return ability. I want to focus on my special teams, especially after we just learned the new NFL kickoff rules, where you're going to want your best, most explosive player back there to make some good plays. If I have a guy who already had good return ability in the old NFL rules, where returns were barely functioning play at the time, and I have the ability to get him for less than $1 million, and then maybe have something to really look forward to, excite my team, have a strategic advantage, why in the flying fuck would I not take that? I like Gibson. I think he's a good player. Again, he's a good depth rotational piece. And then I may be able to go, even though wide receiver drafts are always so deep now that I have 4 receivers on this team, 2 of which you are guaranteed to make the roster in Watson and Kirk because of the financial implications of them. But right there, you have a good wide receiver room. Nothing crazy, but then maybe you can go pick up 1 receiver in the NFL draft and a couple UDFAs and really round out your team. As opposed to, I got no receivers. I got to go get some explosion. I got to go get some guys. So right there, you have a good functional offense with special teams player, and special teams fucking matters. Remember that, people. Special teams fucking matters. That's why you go get a player like Xavier Gibson. So in 16 players, you have what looks to be a pretty well-rounded, functioning offense and a few key defensive pieces. To me, that's a win-win in an expansion draft. But that is how I would be handling a new expansion draft as a 33rd team, to give you a little bit of a tease for our new expansion project for the NFL. But that is our entire NFL expansion team roster from the expansion draft. So to recap, we have our first pick, Jonathan Allen, defensive tackle, Washington. Joe Thuney, offensive guard. I'll go back to the slides for this one. So Jonathan Allen, defensive tackle. Joe Thuney, guard. Tariq Woolen, corner. Geno Smith, quarterback. Andrew Wiley, offensive tackle. Christian Watson, wide receiver. Christian Kirk, wide receiver. Jordan Davis, big-ass defensive tackle. Kenneth Murray, interior linebacker. Tyler Algier, running back. Deron Bland, cornerback. David Sharp, offensive tackle. Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver. Malik Willis, quarterback, specifically our backup quarterback. Jerome Ford, running back. And Xavier Gibson, wide receiver. So right there you have the makings of a decent, competitive team. You're looking to be as competitive as you possibly can right off the bat, and that's what you want to do as an expansion team. So that was the reason we went into that. For a total of $108.16 million, we meet all of our requirements salary cap-wise to become an NFL team with the expansion draft. We have good pieces to start the interior of our team, those cornerstones of our team, and Jonathan Allen, Joe Thuney. We might get some good play out of Geno Smith so we could really be competitive. And if we were even in a weak division, we might even be able to make a playoff push. You never know. Crazier things have happened here, folks. Right there, we have the foundations of a good team. That's what we want to do. That's the whole point of an expansion draft. So we're going to be doing a complete expansion draft, plus cities that are going to be selected, teams that are going to be created, what's the goings on, why do we need to do this in the NFL. All of that is going to be in a big NFL expansion series that's going to take the majority of August. Because I'm actually going to be out of office, so to speak. I'm going to be on vacation in Alaska. But I want to make sure you guys still have some great quality football content for that month of August as we're gearing up the NFL season. So you're going to get the NFL expansion series starting in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from this day. So August 1st is going to be the start of the expansion series. I think we might push it back 1 week just to make sure you guys get something better. But we're going to see how this all goes. We're going to have a lot of fun doing it. Now, if you had a lot of fun on this podcast, you want to support us any way you can, head on over to our Etsy shop, man. Help us out. Go to ptecreative.etsy.com. It's a great place to get some cool merch for yourself. We got all kinds of stuff relating to the things that we do on the channel. We have a lot of Pokemon stuff. We have a lot of football stuff. We have some cool fictional stickers. We have hats. We have hoodies. We have t-shirts, stickers, Pokemon mystery card packs, all kinds of cool stuff. And more merch is coming your way soon. We're going to have a special special unveiling of football merchandise pretty soon to coincide with the season as well. So be on top of that. So if you want to go support us monetarily as best you possibly can and get yourself some cool merch, go to ptecreative.etsy.com. Which you can use right here, this here web address, and do that. If you're just saying, hey man, love the pod, but I don't have the shuckles to help you out, that's okay, but I want to keep doing the supporting, go check out the rest of our content, man. Monday through Saturday now, we have great content here on YouTube, Spotify, and our socials. You can go check that out. Maybe, content-wise, you're like, well, I love football, but I love, I don't know, gaming or Pokemon or whatever. You can do that. Monday, you're going to get Pokemon card pack openings. Tuesday, it's the ONETA Show. It's the flagship podcast with the rotational topics. And we've been doing a lot of crossovers with our new Saturday podcast, the ONETA Movie Show, which is available every Saturday. But Tuesday is the flagship show, the ONETA Show. It's been a lot of fun to do a lot of that kind of stuff. Wednesday, it's the Pokemon Bliss and Oblivion project. We're going to get new Fakemon, get really cool art designs. A lot of fun stuff there. Thursday, you're already here. You already know it. You already love it. It's the ONETA Football Show. And now you're going to get the NFL expansion series, and we're going to get a lot of good stuff going into the season, which is going to be really fun. Friday, it's rotational show. You get the ONETA Adventure Show. Last one out was about the Grand Canyon, which is really fun for me to do. ONETA Brick Builder Show, where we get to do some Lego building, which is really fun. You might get Pokemon card pack openings, Yu-Gi-Oh card pack openings, even Lorcana from time to time, which is a lot of fun, and a lot of cool specialty projects that are on the way. It's been fun getting to work on those as I've been moving for you, but it's been fun. And like I said, Saturday, from now on, you get the ONETA Movie Show, which is super, super cool. So the ONETA Movie Show, we've been doing a lot of crossovers with the ONETA Show, which is really fun. So if you don't see a video posted on Saturday, don't worry, because it's available on Spotify. So if you're like, well, he's not doing it, Spotify always has a release on Saturday. But sometimes we do the release on Tuesday to make sure we get the full week of content. Sometimes we do it on Saturdays to make sure it's reversed. But nonetheless, the ONETA Movie Show, if you want to just talk really good movies and have some fun, listen to the ONETA Show or the ONETA Movie Show every Saturday as well. But it's a lot of fun to be doing all this content for you. So please keep liking, keep commenting, keep subscribing. Review if you're on Spotify. Do whatever you can to support us. We really appreciate it. Check out our socials at P.T.E Creative over on Instagram and TikTok. We're going to keep being consistent over there. But more importantly than anything, gear up for the football season. Be ready to go because it's going to be a lot of fun moving with all of you. Lovely, lovely football fans out there. Peace, love, and hugs to you all. Peace. Bye.